I'm baffled. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I want to talk about this, the guest list by Lucy Foley. Okay, first of all I need to mention that I have been rereading Agatha Christie's books, which I have not read since I was a teenager, a very, very long time ago. And I've been thoroughly enjoying them and wanting to read more murder mysteries, particularly in the style of Agatha Christie, which I think some people refer to as cozy mysteries. I guess perhaps as compared to hard-boiled detective mystery stories. I think what the term cozy is meant to mean is that it isn't extremely graphic, either in sex or violence, etc. It's more about the mystery itself, about trying to solve who actually committed a murder. Now that's my understanding, perhaps I'm wrong. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes I don't like these labels because they can really narrow your view of something. Sometimes a book can fall within several genres or subgenres. Nevertheless, I had been looking for other authors that wrote cozy mysteries or books that are similar in style to Agatha Christie. Not necessarily older writers. I was also looking at contemporary authors. And a lot of the articles I read about similar authors included Lucy Foley. I did not read any spoilers about this prior to reading it. The only thing I did know about it was that it was a murder mystery and it was supposedly similar to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which takes place on an island where there are only, I think, 10 people who cannot actually get off the island until the boat comes back for them. Okay. So I went into this book with this expectation that it was a murder mystery, similar to Agatha Christie, that it was similar in style to And Then There Were None. I've even seen Lucy Foley described as the successor to Agatha Christie. Wow. I'm going to say this up front. When I finished this book, my immediate emotional reaction was, what a piece of garbage. It was. I was so disappointed and so angry that people were comparing this to And Then There Were None. Now that was my emotional reaction. I have calmed down since then and I want to be as fair as I can to this book, though you need to know that I hated it. And time has not made me like it any better. Okay, so let's start off with describing what this book is about. It is about a wedding that is going to be taking place on this island, which you can only access by boat. When we start off the book, it is a few days before the wedding. There are, I think, 13 or so, the back of the book says, there are 13 guests who are on the island prior to the wedding taking place. And each chapter is a first-person narrative by one of the guests, but not all of them. I think it's around 5 or 6. That was something I personally didn't enjoy. We were going from one character to another, to another, to another, and then back again to the first character. It was a little disorienting. The author also skips through the timeline. Sometimes it'll be several days before the wedding, then it'll be on the wedding day, then it'll be a few hours before, a few hours later. It got really messy, and I don't think she pulled it off at all, in my opinion. It was like, hang on, where am I now? And who am I reading about? And the characters' inner voices didn't seem all that dissimilar. And sometimes it was very hard to distinguish which character I was reading about. I have to go back to the start of the chapter to remember that, oh, okay, it is this character. they didn't really stand out as individuals. And one of my biggest complaints about this book was the characterizations. They were very much two-dimensional stereotypes who were extremely easy to predict. There's nothing wrong with stereotypes. They exist because they are realistic, but you need to imbue a character with a bit more than just this very thin veneer of personality. I mean, for example, one of the characters is this bride who is very strong, so we're told, very driven, very successful, and yet also quite bitchy. Well, she's described as having resting bitch face. Okay, this bothered me no end. I know many successful, strong-willed women who are not bitches, and it just seems such an easy cop-out to make this character actually quite unpleasant. Then there was another character who is a young teenager who cuts herself because she has anxiety and other issues. Again, I thought, nothing new here. I have read about so many characters like this that it did not make it feel fresh at all. It just felt like the author took all these stereotypes and just rehashed them. She did not flesh out any of the characters, and I found all of them despicable. I could not stand anyone in this book. I think she was being too ambitious by trying to show us so many different perspectives, and she didn't pull it off, in my opinion. Her women were probably a little bit better drawn, but her men were appallingly bad. She describes this group of men who I believe are in their 30s, who all went to this, what they call public school in England. In Australia, we call it private schools. And I swear they all behaved like 15-year-olds that hadn't grown up. And they had no distinctive voices. They all sounded exactly the same. They were so typical of what people consider public or private school boys. And I just thought, come on. You know, these are some successful people who seem to want to do nothing else but act like children again. At a wedding. At one of their closest friends' wedding. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't buy it for a second, and I thought this is really lazy writing. Frankly, I thought the author could have written one chapter on each of these characters, and that would have been more than sufficient. But it kept going and going. We saw their different perspectives throughout this book. So I got very bored very quickly reading about these people, their relationships, their histories. It was not compelling for me at all. And in fact, I think I was only 20% in, and I thought, I'm reading a book about relationships. It's not about a murder mystery. And that was my conclusion at the end as well. A murder does take place in this book, but that is not the focus of it. What is the focus is their relationships. It is not about trying to guess who killed this person. In fact, the murder does not take place till I think the last 20 or so pages. At which point I was skimming because I got so bored with waiting for this murder to happen and for having clues given to us to try to guess who the murderer was. That didn't happen in this book. Something I really dislike too about this book is it had some gratuitous sex scenes that I did not feel was necessary for a murder mystery, though of course it would apply to a book about relationships. And the sex was also a little graphic for a murder mystery, or what is touted as being a cozy murder mystery. And the plot. The plot. Yeah, what plot? Like I said, it is all about these relationships. I kept waiting for this murder to happen. I kept waiting for it to occur before the guests arrive. It doesn't. It occurs when there is 150 people on the island. How is that any way a mystery similar to And Then There Were None, where there were only 10 people on an island? It isn't. I'm sorry, 150 possible suspects compared to 10 or 13. There's a major difference. I did not find the plot well thought out. It is about giving us hints perhaps as to possible motives without going into detail, even though we are in the mind of these people. And yet the motives were so glaringly obvious from almost the beginning of the book. This was not unpredictable at all. I guessed who was going to be killed. I even guessed the actual murderer very early on in the book. And so many of the possible motives for this murder stretched credulity far too much. Something else I wanted to mention is that whilst the author does a not bad job at creating some atmosphere in this castle that is on this island, she didn't go far enough, probably because we were so bogged down in the memories or emotions of the characters. And I did find it extremely unbelievable that the bogs on this island were so dangerous. And yet there were 150 people at a wedding, most people who do get very drunk, who could wander around and get killed. That just didn't ring true for me at all. Perhaps I should also add that it's not that this is poorly written in the sense that her writing style is bad. It's just the content that I disliked intensely. My impression was that the author thought she was being extremely clever. I didn't find her clever. I just found it so predictable and full of contrivances that did not convince me. There were just so many things in this book that stretched credulity. It was like, oh, come on. And in the end, the revelation of one last possible motive for the murder just put it over the top for me, and I almost threw the book across the room. So if you haven't guessed yet, I did not like this book, no. I thought it was so sloppily done that I am amazed this book is considered good. And it is. It has been voted, I think, at Goodreads as one of the best mysteries in a particular year. Wow. Okay, I'm not going to get into my thoughts about Goodreads, maybe one day, but what I am going to say is I can't believe it. I cannot believe that people think this was a good mystery, because it isn't. Like I said, this was about the relationships of all these different people, these despicable people. It was not about the murder itself, about finding clues and trying to figure it out. And to compare this to Agatha Christie, well, she'd be turning in her grave, I think. And I'm not saying that just because I am a fan of Agatha Christie, but one of the great strengths of her books are her wonderful and very unpredictable plots. Not every book, of course, but most of them. In no way would I consider Lucy Foley a successor to Agatha Christie. Her style is completely different. She clearly cares more about dealing with relationships, about the people, rather than the actual mystery itself. And to add insult to injury, to say this is like And Then There Were None? Yeah, I'm sorry, no, not at all. It took forever to even get to the wedding. I was just so over it within, I think, the first 20% of the book, but I kept pushing through. When I got to around 250 pages, which is about just over halfway, I realized we are not going to see the murder until the very end. And I just started skimming because I was not enjoying this at all. But I like to finish books when I start them. And I thought, can all these people who had recommended this book be wrong? I hate to say it, my conclusion is that they are. Now, perhaps this book would be appealing to people who like reading about relationships, but It should not have been promoted as a murder mystery, because it isn't. And it is certainly not a cozy murder mystery. I truly dislike it when books are advertised as one thing and then it turns out to be something completely different. It's like those trailers you see of films which give you this impression of what the film is about, and when you watch it you think there's no connection to the trailer. That's how I felt about this. But there was just so many issues I had with it. Now, it seems I'm not alone in my dislike of this book. I have read other reviews where people were saying this is quite similar to Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. I have not read the book, but I did watch the show, and I can see what they mean. This book was really about the characters, about their relationships, about their history, and unresolved emotions, I guess. It is not about the murder mystery. In summary, I hated this book. I did. I can't deny it. I think mostly because I was misled by many people, many articles I read, that this was one thing and it turned out to be something completely different. And I think if you are expecting this to be like Agatha Christie, you're going to be disappointed. If you expect it to be similar to And Then There Were None, you're going to be disappointed. And if you expect this to be a cozy mystery, again, you're going to be disappointed because it is none of those things. In my opinion, this is a book about relationships, and a murder does take place, but it is a minor or side issue rather than the main plot of the book. Regardless of how the author perhaps was intending that, I don't think she succeeded. Now, silly me, I actually bought two of her books. I bought this one and I bought, I think, The Apartment. And I have zero interest in reading it. In fact, I want to get rid of this book. I don't even want it in my house. I hated it so much. As for a score, I've thought about this. I already know what I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it 1 out of 10 because I really did hate this book. Now, perhaps I'm being too harsh, but that was my reaction to this book. I cannot see the appeal in it. I really can't. Yes, a murder takes place in it, does not make it a murder mystery. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Now, of course, I would like to hear your opinions if you have read the guest list. Did you like it? If you did, why? Did you dislike it? And you can let me know down in the comments, or you can contact me on Instagram. Thank you all very much for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then you can do the usual. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.